We already mentioned increased potential for child abuse as parents, and that's across the board. Okay. Drug, alcohol abuse, feelings of low self-esteem, and that's kind of what feeds some of the problems as well, particularly the mental health that could develop into depression. Can you think of any more? I listed, I know it's pretty extensive already. And again, keep in mind there's variability with this, as we said. We have to look, again, the age of the child, the frequency, the duration, the type of child we're talking about. Yes?
Would there be an increased risk for suicide attempt, perhaps?
Yes, there is. Yeah. And so this is not all inclusive of everything, but yes, you are correct. And depression is highly correlated with that. So anytime you see depression, that's, yeah. So I'm glad you already made that connection pretty readily. That's good. Okay, let's take a look at long-term effects of sexual abuse. So again, some of these you'll see just gazing through the list at first, you'll see that, oh, okay, that was like the last list, there's similar things there. But problems with sexual adjustment in later life, that's a huge issue for individuals who suffered sexual abuse. And sometimes you'll see extremes of that, where they're extremely promiscuous, okay, or altogether the opposite. There's a total avoidance of sexual relationships. And again, these are people that really their whole, what we would think of as norms for sexual relationships has been distorted. Okay, so there's a lot of confusion about what are norms and even their sexual identity. So anything related to sexuality, there's just a lot of confusion and mix-up for this person, because what they experienced early on was quite distorted and out of norm, right? Then to top that off with low self-esteem, and we see that across the board, which that could develop into a whole list of other problems if you feel that way continually. Believing the world is not safe. Okay. Feeling different from others. Difficulty trusting others, and we see that pretty constant across all the different types of abuse. Depression, anxiety. There also is a number of other mental health disorders for some of these individuals. Depression, anxiety seem to be, actually overall, those are the most prevalent, even in the general population. Depression and anxiety, they're higher among these individuals. But post-traumatic stress disorder, you might see eating disorders with this group as well. Self-destructive behaviors. So actually it's trying to damage their bodies, and oftentimes they really don't want to have people looking at them or even feeling attractive. Again, things are very distorted. So you might see different types of addictions here, self-mutilations. Particularly as adolescents, you may see weight gain, purposeful weight gain, and kind of disheveled, which actually gives the appearance of depressive symptom. But again, that's self-destructive. They don't want people to look at them in any kind of sexual way or be seen as a sexual object. There may be a strong need to control, okay, because they had so much lack of that at the other extreme. Sleep problems, again, the world is not safe, they don't trust, they just sleeping, it can be difficult, and there may be isolation, which actually is not a good thing. Having social connectedness across the board is a very good buffer for mental health problems. So that can actually lead, again, to depression and more self-destructive behaviors, the more isolated they are. So that's something that when we talk about prevention and think what we can put in place, we want to consider that. Any other things that you can think of? Maybe I didn't list. And again, you might, suicide attempts, the correlation with depression. Okay. That would be higher with this group than people that have not been abused, that don't have that history. Okay, and emotional abuse. And again, this is kind of the core of what makes something abusive. If you think about even physical injuries to children, I mean, we all get hurt as children. We weren't abused, but there's accidental injuries that occur. Children could break an arm, break a leg, but the psychological impact when it's an accident is far different than when the parent twists your arm and breaks it, right? So these are the things that we don't often see that really do impact our social emotional development, how we perceive the world, our attitude towards ourselves, towards other people, right? Towards what we can do and control. So there's all these underlying psychological elements that we don't see, but we do know that it's significantly impactful, abuse on the person's developing psyche, Emotional abuse is really attack on the individual self-concept that's developing, and it's being attacked. And so these are some results of that. More likelihood of psychopathology, which is mental health disorders across the board. Low self-worth, irritability, and irritability is a very prevalent symptom of many mental health disorders, actually. More likelihood of self-harm, self-injury. Depression, anxiety also, again, high. Inability to control emotions, and there's actually some very interesting research in this area. There was one that I was looking at, I forget which country it was in. Actually, that thing is recorded now that I think about it, because I was sitting down for a while. Some of the research I was thinking of is that usually when we're under emotional stress, we release stress hormones. There's actually chemicals that are related to stress. So individuals that are under constant stress and anxiety and fear of their lives and stress and stress and stress are going to release more, right? More continually. And this particular research, and again, I apologize because I don't remember where it was done. It wasn't in this country, it was another country. They found that children that experience, and this is more so for emotional abuse is what they were equating it to, that have these high levels of stress, chemicals, that there was actually damage to areas of the brain. Tissue was damaged in the brain, because of the stress hormones being released. And what happened is it actually, the areas that we know have to do with emotional regulation, which there are specific areas in the brain. The frontal lobe is one area that has to do with emotional regulation, that they actually are smaller for these children. So it's kind of an interesting finding because now we're tying it to, physiology. Here we're saying social emotional functioning, but now it's also equated to, brain, the brain, the effects on the brain based on this experience. And we know that does happen. It's just interesting, the research. So I just wanted to point that out because inability to control emotions, there's certain areas of the brain that allow us to do that. And if it's being impaired, again, by this research showing the stress hormones, right, then definitely they would have more of the difficulty, would be impaired. Okay. So withdrawal is also another one that we see. And I think it depends too on how the person copes with this. There may be different facets of that, but withdrawal is one that sticks out that could be definitely more harmful. There's some people that maybe want a lot of attention, maybe more attention seekers, or are always using humor all the time, and that's sort of masking, what's really going on. Okay, so it depends on the person's individual characteristics. Withdrawal can be dangerous because, again, if you're isolating yourself from people, and then you're having, the self-harm, the low self-worth, and the depression, and then potential suicide attempts. That's inability to trust others. That's across the board. Okay, inappropriate, troubled relationships. Definitely, they get such mixed messages as children. Okay, to form meaningful relationships. Yeah, we would expect that it would be difficult, and lack of empathy. Okay, which again has to do with emotion and being able to understand. Okay, and even pick up on other people's emotional feelings and have an understanding of that. They're going to have difficulty with that. Okay, and part of that would be because of what they experienced. Okay, as far as mixed messages and somebody not showing empathy, modeling empathy very well with that. Are these making sense? Okay. And I think some of them, if you think about it intuitively, if I gave you, I was thinking of actually giving you all the categories and you guys generating what you would think would be the outcomes. But I figured that would, take a certain amount of time. But some of it intuitively, if you think about it, it does make sense that they would have difficulty with this and have some of the problems that we see. Definitely neglect, and I don't want to leave that out. That is the largest percentage of children, as far as that are under child abuse, is neglect. And as far as neglect, we definitely know that individuals tend to be more isolated. There's the issues of poor self-esteem and associated with poor academic performance. Okay, so. And again, oftentimes, as I said, even though we're singling these out right now, they really sort of fold into each other. Okay, because most children experience, they're a bit maltreated or experience not just one of these, but multiple. So they'll have the psychological effects as well. Okay, so I want you guys to now stop for a moment. And what time? This clock is off, right? Yeah. Okay. Let me turn the lights on, and I want you to brainstorm regarding prevention. So what can we do? Okay, you know about the prevalence, you know about the long-term effects, it's significant. So what can be done?